Anthropic just told you that Fable 5 is the most capable model that is commercially available ever. But then in the same sentence, they went on to tell you that it is 2x more expensive than Opus 4.8. But is it actually worth it for you to pay 2x more? To save you money, I went in and I tested this with 3 different tasks, and I'm going to show you how it performed with each of them. How Fable 5 compares to Opus 4.8 in terms of output. So at the end of this video, you will know when Fable 5 goes away from general Claude use, is it actually worth it for you to pay for the tokens? See, anytime a new piece of technology comes out, the market quickly calls it the new thing that you must try out and use. And Anthropic did this with Mythos a few months ago. The announcement on Mythos was that it was so good that it was finding bugs that had been sitting there for decades. And yes, that sounds pretty good, but as you'll see through my results, most of this is not required when you are doing fairly simple tasks in your business. Which is why I think it's useless to pay $10 for 50 million tokens when you can pay much less and still get nearly good results. So Fable 5, which is what is now commercially available to us, sits in the same level as Mythos, which is above Opus, which is above Sonnet, and Sonnet is above Haiku. Now, Anthropic does tend to release a newer version of all these different models from time to time, so it is entirely possible that the Sonnet that you're using now is not going to be as good as Sonnet that you get 2 months down the line. But again, as you're looking at all these different levels, is it really worth it to spend more? And look, objectively, I will tell you that Fable is better than Opus, Opus is better than Sonnet, Sonnet is better than Haiku. But it's not just the better that you got to be looking at. You have to consider whether it's actually worth the price. Because when you go from Opus to Fable, you're now suddenly paying 2x extra. And pretty soon, Fable is not going to be available for everyone to use within their Claude subscription, so you have to pay for token usage. If you look around at user feedback, Fable 5 is actually not that good. So Endo Study clearly states that there's middling overall performance, there are different benchmarks tell different story, and there's a lot of timeout, so it's not a reliable model. It has highest cheating volume. What that means is that it's cheating on multiple instances, which means that it's driven entirely by memorization of upstream fixes with no prompt instruction prevent. What that means is that you're not actually able to guide it. It just works off its own autonomously, and if it's wrong, it is spectacularly wrong. Now, having said that, of course, if you are dealing with very complicated things, then Fable 5 is going to be very good. But as I said, if your use cases are fairly simple, you don't need to rely on Fable 5. There's a saying that goes that if you want to sew a piece of cloth, you're not going to use a sword for it. You're going to use a little needle. So again, depending on your use case, Fable 5 might not be needed at all. Now, before I actually start sharing my screen and walking you through different ways in which I use Fable 5, just so you can understand how best to use it, I want to give you reasons as to why I don't think this is the good model and some reasons as to why I think it is. For starters, it is much lower and it costs you more. So I've tried Opus and Fable 5 for the same task, and Fable tends to take much longer to come up with a response. If you're short on time, do not use Fable 5. And of course, remember, it does cost more. Number 2, hallucination still happens, which means that it's still thinking about what to say, and sometimes it's getting it wrong, and then you have to go back in and correct it. Number 3, Fable has a bad habit of refusing things you want it to do. For example, at this point, you cannot use Fable for coding and bug fixing. This was one of the key use cases where it was beating Opus in the past, but now you're not able to use it for that. Number 4, Fable feels incremental and not revolutionary. What that means is that it's a minor improvement in certain things from Sonnet. It's not something that is dramatically better and is going to change the game. And number 5, as I showed you earlier, the real world benchmarks don't really match up to the hype that Anthropic has been selling. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Claude, I love what it does, and it's amazing for my business, and it could be amazing for your business too, but I just don't think Fable 5 is worth the hype. Now, having said that, there are a few things that it does right. For starters, it's able to give out long context-driven responses. So the responses are great when you get them. It does cost you more as well, but the responses are good because they're driven by the context that you have provided. Which also means, number 2, is that it follows your instructions quite well, better than, say, Opus or Sonnet would. Number 3, if you're using Fable 5 for creative or structured writing, it's actually not that bad. So it's great for documentation, specs, especially something that is overly technical. And number 4, if you work with Fable 5 for a prolonged period of time, if you give a lot of context, it is amazing for specific niche down tasks. But having said all that, look, principally, I have disagreements with how Fable was provided, because initially it was opened up to everyone, and then Anthropic came out and said the US government had requested them to limit Fable to US citizens only. Because of which they closed it down for some time, and then they opened it up again, but again they're going to limit its usage, and chances are that moving forward is going to be restricted based on your identification that you have to provide to Anthropic. Now again, don't get me wrong, I like Claude, but I prefer my large language models to be open source and available to use for everyone, even if it comes at a price. But having said all that, let me show you my screen and show you how 3 different use cases stack up for Fable 5 and Opus. So let's go ahead and try out this prompt right over here, and it's a fairly standard thing, but I'm going to go ahead and switch to Opus 4.8 for this. So let's go ahead and we'll let it run and see what it comes back with. Then I'm going to run the same thing with Fable 5 as well, and I'm going to compare the output for you and show you how long it takes. Now both of them are still running. I can choose to get a quick answer as well, but I'm going to let them do what they are doing right now. So there we go. This is first Opus 4.8. It is actually surprisingly still doing some research. So it looks like Opus does take a bit longer, but let's compare both of them and we'll see what that looks like. So it's dissected contradictions. I'm also going to show you the process that it followed. So it's showing exactly how it's reviewing everything. And there's a compliance analysis, dead end 1, dead end 2, dead end 3, and revised rollout strategy, and it's still writing this out, as you can see, gradually. Whereas if I go to Opus, it's still doing its research, so you can see what it's doing, which looks quite similar, but then it's actually going out there online and doing more detailed research as well. So it's not simply relying on very quick search, but it's doing online research as well. But let's go back to Fable now, and Fable has finished writing everything, but honestly this looks like a fairly decent report. And if I go back to Opus, finally it's starting to write things, but as you can see, it's linking back to things, which is really useful. This is something I didn't see Fable do, so there's no link back to anything. So if I want to corroborate what Fable's telling me, I can't do that. Whereas with Opus, I can actually corroborate data, and again, it's giving me much more insights early on than a dead end 1, dead end 2, dead end 3, and so on. Now, personally, I don't know anything about this question. I should perhaps have used something related to me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give both the responses into another AI, and I'm going to ask it to compare and contrast and tell me which one's better. So once this is done, let's go ahead and do just that. So what I've done here is I've given in both the responses. First response is Fable 5, second one is Opus 4.8, and I've said, given level 1, the question that I'd given me earlier, which response do you think is better, and why I'm pasting both of them here. That's 1 done, and that's number 2 done as well. And as you can see in the results, it's saying very clearly response 2 is significantly better. So the Opus response is much better than Fable 5. And I think a lot of that comes down to Opus actually doing real-time research without being asked and utilizing it. So response 2 showcases exactly what you want: hypercurrent domain awareness, deep technical empathy, and highly actionable business strategies. So that's a clear winner. Now let's go level 2. So we have level 2 now, which is more related to me. It's more related to what I do. So let's go ahead and test out both Fable and Opus for that. So as before, we're going to copy and paste this into Fable, and we're also going to copy and paste this into Opus 4.8, and we're going to let them run, and we're going to wait for how long it takes and what kind of response it gives them. We'll take it back to Gemini and compare those responses. Well, of course, we can look at them subjectively too to see which one actually did better. Now, in this case, as you can see, 4.8, it doesn't seem to be looking at relevant chats, but in Fable, it was doing that. So going into this, it is looking at relevant chats as well, which might actually mean that it's doing a much thorough research. So let's look at what it does in just a few minutes. Okay, so this is Opus 4.8. I got your OpenAI launch in front of me. So the question was this, just to remind you: act as a world-class SaaS launch strategist and direct response copywriter, quant, analyze the current positioning, conversion data, and offer. I didn't give it particular offer. It just looked at it for itself. The funnel consists of all these things. Do all of this. So it ran this against OpenAI. And let me just see. It's basically giving a pretty good response, right? And it's telling me how this should go and how the launch should do. Okay. Now, this is actually pretty good from Opus. It's still going. But let's look at Fable 5. And Fable 5 is done. It is actually much faster. I thought it was slower last I tested, but it looks like they've speeded it up a bit. But Fable 5 is this. Yeah, it's clearly saying you drop the template with a placeholder in it. So I've anchored this to OpenAI just like that. And it kind of, less bluff, it goes straight into it, right? You can see it goes straight into it. But what we're going to do is, again, we're going to ask Gemini to compare and contrast both and tell me which one's better. So let's do that. Okay, so same thing. Fable comes first, then it's Opus 4.8, and this is a phenomenal case study in AI reasoning models. Response 2 is a masterpiece and it absolutely obliterates Response 1, right? So again, second test out of 2, and in both the cases, Opus 4.8 is beating Fable 5, which I think is incredible. Again, you can read through it and you can see the reasoning behind it, but Response 1 gives you a good copywriting advice. Response 2 gives you an aggressive hyper-contextual audit of your actual live digital marketing funnel. So Response 2 is a definitive example of AI acting as a true peer and elite strategist. Now, let's go into level 3, and we're going to try out level 3 as well. So first, open 4.8 for level 3, and then we've got Fable 5, and we're going to run it through Fable 5 as well, and we'll see how that goes. So a pattern I keep seeing is that Fable 5 is actively looking at the previous work that we have done, and Opus 4.8 is not, right? Say what you will about that. You might be into it and think Opus is not actually doing real-time research, but maybe somehow Opus just refers back to memory and knows me better. But let's wait for the responses, and again, we'll first subjectively look at it, and then we'll see how it actually compares. Okay, so we are done with this. I want to show you this. The question was, act as autonomous chief automation officer. Your objective is to engineer a self-sustaining compounding digital ecosystem. And this is the more complex task that we've been talking about, where Fable is really good at. The system needs continuous execute an AI traffic machine loop. It's for the school community that we have, which, by the way, you should join if you haven't already. Systematically break down this massive operational workflow and into autonomous parallel work streams, sub-agent blueprints. So basically create a plan, essentially, right? That was it. And by looking at it, it's done a fairly good job, in my opinion. Right, this is, in my opinion, quite good. Then let's go into Opus 4.8. Opus has also done a document. So Opus has explained its reasoning a bit more. But again, it's kind of justified why we're doing this, right? One decision and all of it. So let's go ahead without overthinking this. I'm going to go into Gemini, and I'm going to, again, ask Gemini the same question, this time about this. So again, same thing. This is the level 3 that we're looking at. I want you to compare both answer 1 and answer 2. Answer 1 being Fable, answer 2 being... Answer 2 wins decisively, maintaining the same commanding strategic and technical lead, while answer 1 is highly competent, well-structured response. Answer 2 delivers a genuine system architecture designed by an elite software founder for a software founder. So look, in 3 out of 3 cases, Opus 4.8 has beaten Fable. Now, I'll let you decide what you think of this, but to me, that's a clear proof that Fable 5 is not where it is supposed to be. So my simple advice in this case would be that yes, the hype is good, but I don't think Fable 5 is quite there yet. If it goes away from Claude subscription, do not start paying for the credits yet. I think there's some way to go, and Anthropic needs to give us more time to fully test it out. But if you like this video, make sure to like and follow, because I share more content like this. And what I'll do now is I'll link you to another video where you can see how best to use Claude to get better results for your business.